2008. Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, AIG. Names that are seared into our collective memory. We watched the global financial system come to the brink of the abyss. We saw people lose their homes, their savings, their jobs. We thought we had learned our lesson. We thought it would never happen again. We were wrong. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound alarmist. It's going to sound like a conspiracy theory, but I assure you it is based on fact. It is based on data. And it is the truth that the mainstream media and the central bankers refuse to admit. The crisis of 2026 will not be like 2008. It will be worse, much worse, and the proof is hiding in plain sight. To understand why 2026 will be a disaster, we have to look at the response to 2008. What did the Federal Reserve do? They printed money, a lot of money, a program called quantitative easing, or QE. The idea was simple: inject liquidity into the system to keep the banks from collapsing and to stimulate the economy. And it worked, at least in the short term. The stock market recovered, the economy stabilized, but we created a monster. We became addicted to easy money. Every time the economy showed a sign of weakness, the answer was always the same: more QE, more money printing. Look at this chart. This is the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. In 2008, it was less than $1 trillion. Today, it's close to $8 trillion after peaking at nearly $9 trillion. What does this mean? It means the Fed has injected an unprecedented amount of money into the economy. Money that didn't exist, created out of thin air. This created the everything bubble. Stocks, real estate, cryptocurrencies, art, everything went up in price, not because of real economic growth, but because of this flood of cheap money. We felt rich, but it was an illusion fueled by debt. And now the party is over. The Fed was forced to raise interest rates to fight inflation, an inflation they themselves created with their reckless money printing. And in doing so, they are pricking the everything bubble. This is where the comparison to 2008 becomes terrifying. In 2008, the problem was subprime mortgage debt. It was a big bubble, but it was contained in one sector of the economy. What we have today is a bubble in every sector, and the total debt is much, much larger. In 2008, total US debt was about $50 trillion. Today, it's over $97 trillion, almost double. The federal government's debt alone has exploded from $9 trillion to over $34 trillion. We are drowning in debt, and rising interest rates are making that debt impossible to service. It's like a drug addict who has been given larger and larger doses for 15 years. Now the dealer has cut off the supply. The withdrawal is going to be brutal, and that's what we're going to see in 2026. But there's a part of this story that's even more sinister, and it's the proof that this is not an accident. It is a controlled demolition. In March 2020, in the midst of the COVID panic, the Fed did something unprecedented. It launched a program called the Standing Repo Facility. It sounds technical, but what it does is simple. It allows the big banks to swap their US Treasury bonds for cash at any time, no questions asked. It's an unlimited credit line from the Fed to Wall Street. At the same time, the FDIC, the agency that insures bank deposits, proposed a new rule. A rule that would give them the power, in the event of a crisis, to take over the big banks and potentially use depositors' money to save them. It's called a bail-in. In 2008, we had bailouts, where taxpayer money was used to save the banks. In a bail-in, it's your money, the money in your bank account, that's at risk. Coincidence? I think not. They are preparing. They know the system is about to break, and they are making sure that when it does, they will be safe, and you will be left holding the bag. 2026 will be the year the bill comes due. The everything bubble will burst. The debt will become unpayable, and the financial system as we know it will collapse. Not because it was an accident, but because it was designed to. They have created a system that privatizes the profits and socializes the losses. A system where they get the upside, and you get the bill. The 2026 crisis will not just be a financial crisis, it will be the greatest transfer of wealth in history, from the middle class to the financial elite. So what can you do? The first thing is to understand what is happening. That's why I'm making this video. The second is to prepare. Get out of debt. Own real assets. things that can't be printed out of thin air like gold, silver, maybe even Bitcoin. And most importantly, do not trust the system. Do not trust the politicians. Do not trust the central bankers. They are not on your side. The 2026 crash is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. And it will be worse than anything we have ever seen. The proof is right in front of us. The question is, are we going to pay attention? Let's dig deeper into the mechanics of this, because the scale of the problem is staggering. The everything bubble wasn't just fueled by the Fed. It was a global phenomenon. The European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England, they all followed the same playbook. Trillions and trillions of dollars, euros and yen were pumped into the system, all searching for a return. This created a global feedback loop of speculation. Money flowed across borders, chasing the hottest asset class, whether it was US tech stocks, Chinese real estate, or European government bonds. This interconnectedness means that when the bubble pops, the contagion will be instantaneous and global. In 2008, the collapse of Lehman Brothers, a single US investment bank, triggered a global crisis. In 2026, we won't have a single point of failure. We will have dozens. A crisis in the US corporate bond market could trigger a crisis in the European banking system, which could trigger a crisis in the Japanese government bond market. It will be a cascade of failures, our domino effect on a scale we have never witnessed. And consider the weapons the central banks have left to fight this. In 2008, the Fed could cut interest rates from over 5% to 0. Today, they are starting from a much lower base. They have very little room to cut before they are back at 0. And what then? More QE, but QE has lost its effectiveness. It's like a drug that requires larger and larger doses to have the same effect. And this time, with inflation already high, more money printing would be like pouring gasoline on a fire. It would risk triggering a hyperinflationary spiral, destroying what's left of the currency's value. This is the trap they have set for themselves. They are damned if they do, and damned if they don't. If they keep interest rates high to fight inflation, they will crash the economy and the asset markets. If they cut interest rates and print money to save the economy, they will unleash hyperinflation. There is no easy way out. There is no soft landing. There is only a choice between two different types of disaster. And let's not forget the geopolitical dimension. The world of 2026 is a much more dangerous and unstable place than the world of 2008. We have a major war in Europe. We have rising tensions between the US and China. We have a global energy crisis. A financial crisis on top of this geopolitical instability is a recipe for chaos. It could lead to social unrest, to political extremism, to conflicts between nations. The stakes are not just financial, they are existential. The evidence is all around us if we are willing to look. The inverted yield curve, a classic recession indicator, has been flashing red for months. The housing market is grinding to a halt. Corporate profits are falling. The global supply chain is still a mess. These are not the signs of a healthy economy. These are the signs of an economy on life support, an economy that is about to have the plug pulled. So what does this mean for you, on a practical level? It means that the assumptions that have guided your financial life for the past few decades are no longer valid. The idea that you can just put your money in a 60-40 portfolio of stocks and bonds and expect it to grow is dead. The idea that your home is a safe and stable asset is dead. The idea that your savings are safe in a bank account is dead. We are entering a new era, an era of volatility, of uncertainty, of crisis. An era where the old rules no longer apply. An era where financial survival will require a new way of thinking, a new set of strategies. It will require you to be proactive, to be resilient, to be independent. This is not a message of fear. It is a message of warning, a message of preparation. The storm is coming. You can see the clouds gathering on the horizon. You can feel the wind starting to pick up. You can either stand on the beach and pretend it's not happening, or you can start building your ark. The choice is yours, but don't say you weren't warned. Let's break down the specific catalysts that are lining up for 2026. This isn't just a vague prediction, it's a convergence of multiple predictable cycles and ticking time bombs. First, the corporate debt cliff. During the era of zero interest rates, corporations went on a borrowing binge. They issued trillions of dollars in bonds at ultra-low rates. Much of this debt is scheduled to mature between 2025 and 2028. This means companies will have to refinance this old, cheap debt at the new, much higher interest rates. For many, especially the so-called zombie companies that were only surviving because of cheap credit, this will be a death sentence. They won't be able to afford the higher interest payments. This will lead to a wave of defaults, bankruptcies and layoffs, far exceeding what we saw in 2008. Second, the commercial real estate apocalypse. The pandemic fundamentally changed the way we work. Office buildings in major cities are sitting half empty. Shopping malls are dying. This has created a slow-motion train wreck in the commercial real estate market. The loans on these properties are coming due, and the property values have plummeted. The banks that hold these loans are facing catastrophic losses. We're not talking about small regional banks. We're talking about the big players. This is a multi-trillion-dollar black hole, and its implosion will send shockwaves through the entire banking system. Third, the sovereign debt crisis. It's not just corporations that are drowning in debt. It's governments. The United States national debt is spiraling out of control. The interest payments alone are projected to become the largest single item in the federal budget, surpassing even defense spending. At some point, the market will lose faith in the U.S. government's ability to pay its debts. When that happens, demand for U.S. Treasury bonds will collapse, interest rates will skyrocket, and the U.S. dollar will lose its status as the world's reserve currency. This isn't a distant threat. It's a mathematical certainty. The only question is when the breaking point will be reached. All signs point to the 2025-2027 window. Fourth, the demographic time bomb. The baby boomer generation is now entering retirement in full force. They are starting to sell their assets, their stocks, their bonds, their homes, to fund their retirement. This creates a massive, sustained selling pressure on the market. For decades, they were the engine of asset price growth. Now they are becoming the engine of its decline. There simply aren't enough younger buyers with enough capital to absorb this wave of selling. It's a demographic headwind that will depress asset prices for a generation. When you combine these four factors, the corporate debt cliff, the commercial real estate apocalypse, the sovereign debt crisis, and the demographic time bomb, you don't just get a recession. You get a perfect storm. You get a systemic crisis that is an order of magnitude larger and more complex than 2008. In 2008, the problem was concentrated in the U.S. housing market. In 2026, the problem is everywhere. It's in corporate debt, commercial real estate, government debt, and demographics. It's a multi-front war, and the central banks have already spent all their ammunition. They will try to tell you it's a soft landing. They will try to tell you it's transitory. They will try to tell you they have it under control. They will lie. They will lie because the truth is too terrifying. The truth is that the system they built is fundamentally broken. It is a house of cards built on a foundation of unpayable debt. And the wind is starting to blow. This is not the time for complacency. This is not the time for blind faith in the authorities. This is the time to open your eyes, to see the writing on the wall, and to take control of your own financial destiny. The crisis is no longer a distant possibility. It is a mathematical and historical certainty, and it is arriving right on schedule. Think about the psychological component. In 2008, the narrative was that a few greedy bankers got out of control. The problem was framed as a moral failure, a bug in an otherwise sound system. The solution was more regulation, more oversight. It was a story that allowed people to maintain their faith in the fundamental integrity of the system. This time, the narrative is different. This time, the problem isn't a few bad apples. The problem is the tree itself. The problem is the Federal Reserve. The problem is the very nature of fiat currency and debt-based capitalism. This is a crisis of confidence, a crisis of faith. And that is a much more dangerous and unpredictable animal. When people lose faith in the currency itself, when they lose faith in the institutions that are supposed to be the bedrock of the economy, their behavior becomes irrational. We will see bank runs, we will see panic buying, we will see social unrest. The psychological shock of this crisis will be an order of magnitude greater than in 2008, because it will not just be a financial crisis, it will be a philosophical one. It will force people to question the very foundations of our economic reality. And the political response will be equally extreme. In 2008, the solution was bailouts. In 2026, the solution will be control. They will use the crisis as an excuse to implement the agenda they have been planning for years. Central bank digital currencies, digital IDs, social credit scores. They will promise you safety and security in exchange for your freedom. They will offer you a universal basic income, paid in a programmable currency that they can control. They will tell you it is the only way to prevent another crisis. They will tell you it is for your own good. It will be the final, irreversible step towards a techno-feudalist society. This is the real stakes of the 2026 crisis. It is not just about your portfolio. It is not just about a recession. It is about the future of human freedom. It is the culmination of a 50-year experiment in fiat currency that began in 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. That experiment is now coming to its inevitable, catastrophic conclusion. This is not a drill. The timeline is accelerating. The pieces are all in place. The warnings are clear. The only remaining question is whether you will be a victim of the coming collapse or a survivor who saw it coming and prepared. The choice, as always, is yours.